There is a quiet instant almost no one admits to, that moment when your soul feels like it's shaking on the inside, while your face stays composed, polite, seemingly at peace. It's the space between a held-back sigh and an automatic smile, where the secret battle so many people fight in silence truly lives. Every one of us has walked through that invisible territory. The weight no one sees, the doubt that echoes, the feeling of carrying an entire world inside your chest while the world outside keeps demanding you act normal. It's in this landscape of inner conflict that many lives are standing right now, maybe even yours, in this exact moment as you listen to these words. There are people who wake up every day as if they're putting on a cracked suit of armor. They smile, get things done, talk, help others, but inside there are storms no one notices. These are the souls who've mastered the art of looking fine while desperately searching for a ray of light on the inside. And maybe you're here because you know too well what it feels like to hold up the outside while the inside is calling for help. It's an old fight, human, deep, a struggle that crosses centuries of history and hides in the corners of spiritual experience. And what if I told you there are only 3 words, spoken over 2,000 years ago by Jesus Christ, that have the power to completely change what you're feeling right now? 3 words so simple they seem too small to carry such strength, yet so profound they've been transforming lives since the very first time they were spoken. Words that don't promise instant miracles, but reveal spiritual keys capable of realigning your heart, calming your mind, and reigniting a tired spirit. These words are not magic formulas. They're invitations. They call your awareness to a higher place, where fear loses control, where purpose starts beating again, where healing stops being a distant dream and becomes a real path. They're principles that echo across different traditions. They find resonance in Stoicism, where inner courage is cultivated as a virtue. They resound in ancient mysticism, where the movement of the soul is seen as a journey. They dialogue with modern psychology, which points to the power of inner choices in the face of the conflicts that cut through us. Today, you are here not by accident. This video exists for people who carry silent battles, for those who struggle to keep their own mind at peace, for those who feel their heart is asking for answers deeper than simple rational explanations. Our purpose is to walk together, slowly opening doors to a clarity you may not have even realized you were searching for. But before we move on, I need to prepare you. The 3rd word is the most challenging, and because of that, it's the one that heals the most. When Jesus said, "Do not fear," he wasn't canceling the emotion of fear or asking us to be superhuman. What he was offering was something far deeper, an awakening of consciousness. These words, so ancient and yet so alive, are not a request to eliminate fear, but an invitation not to let it rule your life. After all, fear is part of the human condition. What imprisons us is not feeling afraid, but handing that fear the power to define our steps. And that's where the phrase of Jesus rises like a spiritual lighthouse, lighting up our inner world. Fear is a quiet force. It wears many masks: anxiety, insecurity, doubt, paralysis, self-sabotage. It's like a shadow that grows when we believe we're alone facing an uncertain world. Jesus, however, never promised us a life without challenges. He called us to an inner posture strong enough to face them. Do not fear becomes an invitation to courage, a courage that doesn't come from impulse but from clarity, a courage that doesn't erase fear but puts it into perspective. The ancient Stoics understood this principle in a similar way. For them, courage was not the absence of fear, but the deliberate choice to act in spite of it. In modern psychology, this idea reappears with another name: emotional regulation. It's the understanding that feeling fear does not define who we are, But responding to fear with awareness creates new pathways inside the mind. It's fascinating to see how Jesus was centuries ahead of contemporary theories. His simple phrase is actually a key to breaking destructive mental patterns that feed our inner conflict. Now, imagine a short story. A woman walks alone down a narrow street in a moment of deep uncertainty. The world around her feels suspended, as if every step echoed her doubt. She feels like she's at her limit, crushed between responsibilities, expectations, and the fear of not being enough. Inside, she keeps repeating the same old sentences to herself. I can't do this. It's going to go wrong. I'm not capable. One day, exhausted from fighting her own thoughts, she sits down on a bench in a quiet park. And there, in that instant of inner surrender, something subtle happens. A distant memory crosses her mind, words she heard as a child. Do not fear. They appear like a warm whisper, like an invisible touch over her heart. It's not that the fear disappears, but something shifts. For the first time, she realizes she can keep walking not because she isn't afraid, but because she refuses to let fear lead her anymore. The next step isn't easy, but it's hers. And that small movement becomes the beginning of her transformation. Science explains this in another way. Our brain, wired for survival, creates threat scenarios that often don't exist. It imagines dangers, magnifies problems, and anticipates pains that rarely become real. When Jesus said, "Do not fear," he was teaching a way to interrupt this cycle. It's as if he was saying, come back to the present. Breathe. Reality is smaller than the fear your mind is creating. When we refuse to feed those projections, awareness takes back control and peace begins to grow. If you'll allow me, I want to guide you through a simple exercise. Inhale deeply, hold your breath for a moment, and let your body recognize this gesture as an invitation to calm. Now exhale slowly, feeling each breath out, release a bit of the weight you've been carrying. As you breathe, repeat within yourself, I choose courage, I choose presence, I choose not to fear. Notice how these words create space in your mind. Notice how your chest, little by little, seems to gain a millimeter of freedom. This is how it begins, not with huge inner revolutions, but with small acts of surrender to the present moment. Putting "do not fear" into practice in daily life means interrupting self-destructive inner dialogue the very second it appears. It means mentally rewriting the sentence we usually say right before we give up. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "this won't work," replace it with "I can try." When the thought, "I'm not strong enough," shows up, answer with, "I can take one step." These small shifts in perspective don't just reduce fear, they reshape your whole path. But courage, by itself, is not enough to sustain a life. Courage without direction can turn into nothing more than random motion, and movement without purpose rarely heals inner conflict. Jesus knew that. That's why, after teaching us not to fear, he gave us another word, just as deep, capable of pointing the way and lighting the next stretch of the journey. And that is the word we're going to explore next. There are words that don't just sound, they move inside us. Follow me is one of them. When Jesus spoke this invitation, he wasn't offering just a physical path, a geographical route, or a list of rules. He was offering direction, meaning alignment. To follow, in its deepest spiritual sense, is to accept that the inner journey is not built in stagnation, but in motion. It is to understand that purpose doesn't appear out of nowhere as a fully finished revelation, but is revealed step by step as we dare to walk. Philosophers from different eras have seen in the act of following a universal metaphor for life. For the ancient sages, the human soul is like a sheet of water. It only becomes clear when it flows. When it stays still for too long, it turns cloudy. In the same way, awareness fragments when it doesn't choose a direction. That fragmentation is what creates inner conflict, the feeling of being split between what you want and what you fear, between what you dream of and what you avoid. The human mind, when it remains stuck, builds mazes, but when it moves, it builds roads. Jesus called ordinary people workers, simple folks, tired hearts. He called exactly those who were living without direction. It's impossible not to see a reflection of that in our world today. Many people walk around with a mental map full of possible routes, but lack the courage to choose one. They live suffocated by too many options, by constant comparison, by the silent pressure to be everything at once. Follow me cuts through that fog. It's as if Jesus was saying, choose a path, meaning is born in the walk. Modern psychology confirms what spirituality has been teaching for centuries. When the mind doesn't decide, it breaks. When there are too many directions inside, none of them grows strong. Energy is scattered, the soul gets confused, and the body feels the weight of indecision. Follow me is the cure for this dispersion. It is the acceptance of one clear intention, even if it's small, even if it's simple. But following is not blind obedience. It is conscious surrender. It's looking towards something greater than your fears and deciding to move in that direction. Eastern philosophy would say that to follow is to allow the Tao, the way, to lead us. Jewish mysticism would say that when we follow, we align ourselves with the divine will. Stoicism would claim that to follow is to act according to higher reason, even when the heart hesitates. All of these ideas meet at the same point. The path reveals itself in the movement. To bring this truth closer to your heart, let me tell you a deeper story, divided into 3 movements: conflict, breaking point, and transformation. Once there was a man who lived in a constant state of confusion. His name doesn't matter, because he could be anyone. He woke up every day feeling lost, as if he were walking down a hallway with no doors. Out there, the world seemed to demand clarity, productivity, firmness, but inside, there was a dense fog. He tried to convince himself he was fine, but his heart knew he wasn't. There was an emptiness, a silence that hurt. The conflict started small, a question here, an uncertainty there. But over time, this feeling grew so intense that his life lost its color. He no longer knew where to go, and that absence of direction began to corrode his spirit. The breaking point came on a particularly difficult night. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, breathing like someone carrying stones on his chest. He thought about giving up, not on his physical life, but on his emotional life. Giving up on feeling, trying, wanting. It was as if he had been swallowed by an inner emptiness, and in that dark moment, as silent tears rolled down his face, he heard something, not an outer voice, but an inner whisper, almost imperceptible. 2 ancient words surfaced, as if they had crossed centuries just to reach that exact instant: follow me. He didn't understand it at first. Follow what? Follow who? But the phrase wouldn't fade. It kept repeating, gentle yet firm. It was as if Jesus, through those eternal words, were calling him from the inside out. The rupture happened there. In that second when he realized he didn't need all the answers to take the first step. He only needed one step. One possible step. One small step. And that's what he did. The next day, instead of trying to fix his whole life at once, he chose a single action. He walked to the park near his home and allowed himself to breathe the morning air. It was a simple movement, but it represented his return to the path. The transformation did not happen quickly, but it began with that small gesture. In the days that followed, he chose other small actions, making his bed, walking for 10 minutes, writing a sentence that spoke to his soul, saying a short prayer before going to sleep. Each micro movement opened up a new space. He wasn't following perfection, he was following direction. Little by little, the fog started to lift. He discovered that his life had meaning, not because he had found some huge purpose, but because he had started to follow a daily intention. And in that simplicity, the light returned. This story exists because it reflects the journey of thousands of souls living the same conflict. And maybe it reflects you too, at some point in your life. When Jesus says, "Follow me," he is offering the human heart a way out of the maze. He's saying that meaning is not discovered standing still, but revealed in the walk. For you who are listening now, there is a simple, almost poetic exercise that can transform your week. Choose a single micro-purpose to follow for 7 days. It doesn't have to be big. It could be walking for 5 minutes every day, praying when you wake up, writing one line of gratitude, organizing a small part of your home, or even sitting in silence for 2 minutes just to listen to your own thoughts. The important thing is not the gesture itself, but the commitment to follow it. At the end of those 7 days, something inside you will have changed. Because to follow is to bring mind, spirit, and body into the same direction. Jesus never called anyone by promising instant comfort. He didn't offer an easy life. He didn't hand out shortcuts. What he offered was meaning, and it's exactly this meaning that heals inner conflict. Because when we know where we're going, even if it's one step at a time, the soul stops wandering lost and begins to bloom. But there is a quiet weight, often heavier than fear, heavier than lack of direction, a weight strong enough to stop any journey. It's a weight we've all carried and few manage to release. And it's right here, in this delicate place, that the third word enters. There is a deep reason forgiveness is the most challenging word. It touches wounds we don't show anyone, emotional scars we hide even from ourselves. Forgive doesn't just stir up reflection, it stirs up resistance. Because forgiveness stirs old pain, unfinished stories, memories we'd rather leave asleep. When Jesus said, "Forgive," he spoke to our soul and our humanity at the same time, offering a key many reject because they believe forgiving means giving up dignity or justice. But that's not what it is. It never was. In the teachings of Jesus, forgiveness is not submission, weakness, or passive acceptance of what hurt us. Forgiveness, in his wisdom, is an act of inner freedom. It's like opening a secret door inside your chest and allowing light to enter again. Jesus understood that no one truly walks forward while carrying emotional chains. Forgiveness is not a gift to the other person. It is a rescue of yourself. Psychology confirms what spirituality has long known. Resentment, guilt, and harsh self-criticism are not just feelings. They are weights that distort perception, damage the mind, and trap the soul in repetitive cycles of pain. When we hold on to grudges, we become prisoners of what hurt us. With every memory, we reignite the same fire we claim we want to put out. It's not unusual that our loudest battles aren't with others, but with ourselves. Forgiving is not forgetting. It's not justifying the unjustifiable. It's not saying it was all fine. Forgiving is letting go. It is recognizing that even though the wound was real, it does not deserve the power to steer the course of your life. To forgive is to remove the emotional poison that keeps circulating long after the event is over. It's allowing yourself to breathe again without the bitter taste of the past stuck in your throat. To make this understanding even more alive, let me tell you a tender story, a story that may mirror the journey of many hearts. There was a person who carried resentment for years. The pain began small, almost unnoticeable, but it grew like a shadow dragging along behind them. One day, this person realized that bitterness was shaping the way they lived. They no longer smiled with the same lightness, no longer trusted with the same openness, no longer slept with the same rest. The resentment had become a second heart, one that only pulsed pain. Tired of this burden, they decided to look for healing. They tried to forget. They tried to justify. They tried to ignore. None of it worked. Until, in a moment of deep honesty with themselves, they dared to ask, what if forgiveness is the missing key? At first, there was resistance. Wounded pride shouted. The past accused. Justifications multiplied. But something stronger began to rise, the need to live at peace. Slowly, this person realized that forgiveness wouldn't only set the other free, it would mainly set themselves free. When they finally decided to forgive, there was no music, no lights, no applause. There was only a different kind of silence, a space that had once been filled with pain and was now empty. That space turned into breath, then into courage, then into life, and for the first time in years, they felt whole. Jesus taught that forgiveness and healing cannot be separated. He knew the human heart gets sick when it holds on to what it was never meant to carry alone. To forgive is to let time flow inside us again. It's creating a new beginning in a place that once looked like a dead end. To help you who are listening, I'd like to suggest a simple exercise of inner reflection. Close your eyes for a moment and bring to mind a memory that still feels heavy. Don't force anything. Let it come naturally. Feel the emotion, but don't cling to it. Now imagine that this memory is a stone you're holding in your hands. Gently visualize yourself opening your fingers and letting that stone fall to the ground. Notice the lightness that appears. Repeat inside yourself, I allow myself to let go. This symbolic act can be the beginning of a profound transformation. Inner healing only becomes complete when the heart releases what it was never meant to carry alone. Now that you've walked through each of the 3 words, something inside you may already be quietly rearranging itself. Do not fear. Follow me and forgive are not isolated fragments. They are parts of the same spiritual map, designed for those who live in inner conflict and are searching for clarity and peace. Each one touches a specific dimension of the soul, and together they form a triangle of transformation capable of sustaining a lighter life, a more conscious life, a life more aligned with what Jesus came to awaken in us. Do not fear is courage. It is the first gesture that breaks paralysis and lets the soul breathe again. Without this inner courage, no real movement can begin. It's like lighting the first flame in the middle of the darkness. Follow me is direction. It's the invitation, not just to feel courage, but to use it to move forward. It's the extended hand that points to a meaning, a north, a journey. Courage sets you free. Direction guides you. Forgive is healing. It is the deep act of releasing the weight that would make any path impossible. It is the clearing of the inner ground so your steps are no longer taken over thorns, but over fertile soil. When these 3 words come together, they create a new inner landscape. It's as if Jesus were saying, face your fears, follow a purpose, and release what weighs you down. It's a process that doesn't demand perfection, only willingness. A process that reorganizes the heart and brings peace, not as the absence of problems, but as the presence of meaning. And now that you know this map, there's only one thing left, learning how to walk with it. Let's go back for a moment, to the beginning of this journey, to that quiet, almost invisible moment when inner conflict pulses like a cry for help, hiding behind everyday gestures. Maybe you arrived here carrying that weight, believing no one would ever truly understand what goes on inside you. But now, after traveling through the 3 words of Jesus, something essential has changed. You are no longer unarmed in front of your own pain. You carry real, living spiritual tools, tools capable of shining light into the darkest corners of your soul. Philosophy teaches us that the greatest human power is the inner choice. And Jesus, in his eternal wisdom, always pointed his teachings toward that invisible place where our deepest decisions are made. Do not fear gave you back courage. Follow me handed you direction. Forgive created space for healing. Each of these words touched different dimensions of your humanity, as if he were rebuilding your path from the inside out. And the most beautiful part of all this is realizing that Jesus doesn't appear only as a historical figure, but as a master of consciousness, someone who understood the spiritual architecture of human life. He knew the greatest battles aren't won with outer strength, but with inner lightness. He knew peace doesn't arrive as a random gift dropped from the sky, but as the fruit of a heart that has chosen to change its relationship with fear, with purpose, and with the past. Right now, you may be feeling a new kind of quiet, a gentle sense that a fresh start is possible, and it is. Every day, even the most ordinary ones, carries the seed of a new chapter. It doesn't matter what you've been through or how long you've been stuck in your own shadows. Tomorrow still remains sacred territory for those who want to walk with more awareness. And there's something I need to remind you of. You are not alone on this journey. The words that crossed the centuries to reach you today were not left behind by accident. They were meant for sensitive hearts, for people who search for light, even while they face inner storms. They were meant for you. So take a deep breath for a moment and ask yourself, without rushing, with full honesty, which of the 3 words spoke most deeply to your soul today? As we arrive at the end of this journey, I want you to notice something subtle yet powerful. There is a spiritual softness resting in the air right now. It's as if the 3 words we've explored, do not fear, follow me, and forgive, were still vibrating around you, adjusting your emotions, reorganizing your inner vision, offering a quiet embrace to everything you're carrying. This video wasn't created to teach theories. It exists to touch real lives, especially those walking in inner conflict and no longer knowing where to rest their hearts. If you made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized that you needed to hear these words. Maybe it was courage, maybe direction, maybe healing, or maybe a little of each. And I want to invite you, with all gentleness and respect for your journey, to share in the comments which of these words touched you most deeply. It's not just a simple interaction, it's an act of inner recognition. When you write, you give form to the movement of your soul. You confirm to yourself that you're ready to look at your life with more love and awareness. If this reflection has done you good, allow yourself to keep seeking content that nourishes your soul. Modern life is loud, and creating spaces for silence, spirituality, and depth is a luminous form of resistance. Here, you'll always find a place to breathe, to reflect, and to remember who you really are on the inside. So, if you'd like to keep walking this path with me, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like, not out of obligation, but so we can stay connected in building this inner light together. And before we say goodbye, I want to leave one last image for your heart. Imagine Jesus walking beside you, not as a distant figure, but as a presence that welcomes and understands you. He looks at you with tenderness and says, in the softest tone there is, I am with you. May this image stay with you on the hard days and on the joyful ones, reminding you there is a greater meaning holding each of your steps. May these 3 words find a home inside you. May they grow roots. May they bloom. And when the world outside tries to confuse you again, may you return to them the way someone returns home.